Thank you, Greg, for that selection. This is the day the Lord has made, and indeed we do rejoice in it, because it's a day that marks a journey. Now, Mrs. Jane Campbell is going to read from the New Testament, the book of the Revelation of John, and chapter 3. Mrs. Campbell, I just put the name.
Thank you. The book of Revelation was written by John at a time when the Christians were being very hard pressed. And this book of Revelation is written in symbolic language, and really could only be the Christians who were able to understand it. It's a bit like an orchestra with the same theme appearing time and time again, but only in a different form. Well, Revelation chapter 3 and verse 20. Listen, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into his house and eat with him, and he will eat with me. To those who win the victory, I will give the right to sit beside me on the throne, just as I have been victorious now, sit by my Father on his throne. If you have ears, then listen to what the Spirit says to the churches. Amen.
Thank you, Mrs. Campbell. From across the years, and coming back especially this morning to help make this end of the weekend, to help make our celebration together with her daughters. Now, the tune, the Old 100, is what we use for the words, God of the ages, by whose hand, through years long past, our lives were being on the sheet. number 402, please, which is St. Patrick's breastplate. And if you turn the page to the 5th verse of 402, and say with me, together, Christ be with me, Christ within me, Christ behind me, Christ before me, Christ beside me, Christ to win me, Christ to comfort and restore me, Christ beneath me, Christ above me, Christ in quiet, Christ in danger, Christ in hearts of all that love me, Christ in mouth of friend and stranger. I think it's very important that we be affirming our faith as we journey, and we take the opportunities which have to do with poetry and prose and artistry and all the design, all the floral arranging and catering and all the gifts and artistry that also are music, like things like pipe organs that are part of our life as a people of God that you find nowhere else in the same combination, the same combining. Coming from the vestry this morning, I was deeply conscious of being last in a long line who have come from the vestry to lead worship in this church. More than anybody here will know, probably, because there have been occasions and individuals, and I know of some who are not here and haven't been mentioned at all in the celebration so far. But I know they've been here and they've served here even in the short term, or perhaps on supply. And they all are a whole long line. And I come last, or we come last as we come and lead your worship this morning. Servants of the Word, humbly endeavouring to understand and share the understanding of faith, which is also standing under the Word. I want to begin with the theme of the door. You heard it in the psalm that Lynn read for us this morning. I'd rather be a doorkeeper in the house of the Lord than anything else in all creation. Something like that. And St. John, the Divine, as he's known of, with those words, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock," written because it was so very true for the church under stress, as Mrs. Campbell said. Here I stand, knocking at the door, in a modern translation. I don't know how long it's hung on the vestry wall, but I had to bring it through with me. How long? Has it been there as long as the church? Was there a time when it didn't hang on the wall? Holman Hunt, in his interpretation of that verse from the book of Revelation, "Behold, I stand at the door knocking." The original I saw on a pillar in the half-light in a side aisle of St. Paul's Cathedral in London. Belongs in the half-light. And then the light really shows up in the impressiveness of the artist in his catching the feeling of the door, which is the access between Jesus and us. Put that down here too. And then I turn to the Gospel of John and to one of my favourite passages, and one of yours too probably. John chapter 14 and those opening verses. Set your troubled hearts at rest. Trust in God always. Trust also in me. There are many dwelling places in my Father's house. If it were not so, I should have told you. For I am going there on purpose to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I shall come again and receive you to myself, so that where I am you may be also, and my way there is known to you. How many times have you heard that passage read as a lesson? We all bring our own life experience to the hearing of such a verse and such a statement, of course. And I have to say that my experience has brought me to my understanding, which is this, along these lines, that the dwelling places in my Father's house are actually, have got doors connecting, right? They're not shut off from each other. In fact, it's not a matter of dwelling places, which are rooms in a mansion as I once thought it was, but rather it's of God's providing. God's oikos is God's providing for us. And in that oikos, there are places for us to be. And they are places which we can know as stopovers, pause points, dwelling places for the night and to the next day, rather like youth hosteling through the country or something. And God will have us move on, and move on, and move on. He intends us not to get into some place and feel that this is it and get confined and closed there, but to actually move within God's providing. And there will always be a new growth, a new door awaiting us. Do you believe that? Of course you do. You've known it for so many years to be true that you're not going to stop or give any question to it now. As it has been, so it shall be. In the Father's house are many dwelling places. Christian growth, experience, faith, learning what hope means, learning how hope reaches into life and touches our life at the times when we need hope. You won't learn about hope apart from the times that you need to. Life's like that, faith's like that. So these things then, John 14, again, here I stand knocking at the door. Seems to be entirely appropriate between the Gospel and the revelation of John. We could then say that the way, the Christian way, is one of opening doors and encounters with Christ. Across a lifetime of experiences. Decade by decade, as we have recognised this morning, doors that have been closed as well as doors that have opened, doors that have closed on other churches that were built in this town in order that these doors might be open for the inflow and the flowing together of these last 27 years of the Uniting Church, which has been a very significant opening in the life of the church nationally, wherever this has happened. And wherever it is happening now, as we learn what it is to open up the doors and to the bidding of Christ. The longer view, of course, will embrace both world wars and the Depression years. And some of you will be thinking back to such times as Bible class members, Sunday school pupils. The days of disaster locally, which have been marked here in this church, and which you know about and I only hear about. You've got to experience those, to know what it is to be a community in grief. And the days of joy that have lit and livened this congregation and the whole town, I'm sure, on occasions. A congregation, if you like to think of a wild guess, of maybe 500,000 people who have sat in these pews, who have come through these doors. Maybe a sixth of the population of this country have sat as worshippers, not necessarily, but that's units, shall we say, repeatedly in many cases. Thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands, and not just the hundreds that we might rise to thinking about, are the people that we are attuned to this morning. And glad to have some here this morning who are here for the first time, perhaps, because there's always got to be the new experience for us to enjoy virtually. Let us move to the present and to the threshold on which we stand, because this is indeed what we must be doing. I'm taking the centering name of Christ. C-H-R-I-S-T. This way you'll be able to remember the sermon afterwards. Maybe. Christ. Let's look at the letters and see what they might spell out for us to carry out of current understanding of the calling of the people of God in which we share in this community, or from whatever community we come and will be returning. Let's begin then with the letter C. You'll make your choice for these things, I've made mine. I have the great honour and privilege of sharing mine, but you might share yours sometime too with another. Compassion. This glorious word, compassion, that is right central to our understanding of God. God is love. God is compassion. In a sense of creative care. Creativity in caring. Not just love, pudding style, but creative care. With a strong feminine aspect in the Hebrew. Because the word actually has connections with the idea of a womb, womb-like care, mother's care, the care that having birthed goes on caring down through the years, through all the stages. Compassion. God is that kind of compassion, that kind of influence in our lives at work, birthing and nourishing yet again. And this creative care awaits expression in the new parish centre, in its design and in the kind of inviting statement that it will be in the community if it's anything at all. It'll be an inviting statement related to compassion. The letter H. Hospitality. I offer hospitality. As in the original form, where it is related to healing, hospitality is also healing. Those were the places where you called as a traveller and were cared for the road ahead. Henri Nouwen says, from the point of view of Christian spirituality, it is important to stress that every human being is called upon to be a healer. Every human being is called upon to be a healer in relation to pain and woundedness. Healers and hosts who patiently and carefully listen to the story of sufferers. And in the telling of their stories, strangers befriend not only their host, but also their own past. The counselling, caring thing that comes in to the hospitality. To the letter R. And I want to suggest But under this letter we might well say righteousness. Not righteousness in the narrow old sense of individual correctness and moralism. Not that sort of righteousness. There are influences at work in loving ways which don't need to be brought in under that heading, while this righteousness stands boldly before us. Advocacy of concerns, of writing the wider seed, and the church being seed in the role of advocacy, of which we are still early learners. The social fabric, special needs, rural and urban. The church in advocacy, the church in righteousness and social justice terms. Some here with us this morning have been teachers of others in the way that this might be so, and I'll take my hat off to Kim Bathgate for that. To the letter I, inclusiveness, where acceptance is not a matter of you as you are, by me as I am, but an acceptance that's going to do something for me as a change agent. I'm actually changed by my acceptance of you, and you are changed by your acceptance of me. And life is meant to be something going on between us in a relationship, rather than judgments being passed upon each other, which are quite unfit to be called gospel. And so it's that rebirthing theme with which we began in relation to lifetime choices and multicultural richness in the forming. I'm sorry our Pacific Island folk are not with us this morning. They've taken a winter holiday to northern climes. I think there's been an illness in the family actually. Some care about health. Pauto and Agulia. To the letter S, and the stewardship of creation, about which I don't need to say much because on the coast we live with this as a live subject, the environmental thing. The connectedness that encourages a two-way debate, so that there is a traffic between spiritual experience and environmental concerns, and environmental concerns also change our spiritual experience in some ways, and our awareness of our spirituality that lies beneath just the headlines. Either way, there is an increased reverence. O God of the morning, Christ of the hills, O Spirit who all the firmament fills, O Trinity blessed, who all goodness wills, keep us all our days. That's actually the old Celtic, but it actually works very well for us still. And finally to T. How are we going? C-H-R-I-S-T. Travelling. A travelling God. A God who is one who travels with our travels. Our journeying is a faith journeying. We can't understand what life's all about apart from that, if we hold a faith perspective. A time which it's interesting to say, which is a particular time in our travelling though. Some of us again were at a theological little get-together the other week, and I was interested that 2 and 3 times in the papers that were delivered, there was the same theme coming through. It's a time for the church to downsize. To get away from the grandness and the posturing, and to be there, actually, effectively, learning what it is to be the church of next century, having moved from the church of last century. And to be exploring what this means in a way that will not let us alone. A time to downsize and to offload excess baggage. A time, and we'll be talking about this in coming weeks in the new centre, a time for reframing. because we've got to do just that. It's a word, but it holds a whole lot of questions about our commitments and how we see ourselves in our relationship to the mission of the church as we are it in the here and now.